Morning routines have been argued about for 20 years. 5 a.m. wake-ups, ice baths, coffee delayed by 90 minutes, gratitude journals. Each tip sounds like a discovery. The science says something else. Almost none of it changes your day. What does is one process happening in your bloodstream during the first 30 minutes after you open your eyes. And you are probably breaking it every single morning. Start with the things that are not the answer. The 5 a.m. club is the most famous one. Wake at 5, train, journal, read, and your life will change. It sounds elegant, but genetics tell a different story. Every person has a chronotype, an inherited tendency toward being a morning person or a night person. A large genome-wide analysis found that roughly half of people lean toward an evening type, and this is wired into the genome, not into willpower. If your biology does not match a 5 a.m. start, the early alarm just adds chronic sleep debt. Researchers call it social jet lag. Focus drops, mood drops, productivity drops. It does not climb. Next, the 90-minute coffee delay. The idea is that cortisol wakes the brain on its own, so caffeine should wait. It sounds scientific. The research does not support it. Cortisol follows its own circadian rhythm regardless of whether you drink coffee or not. And adenosine, the molecule caffeine actually blocks, does not drop after waking. It built up during the night. Coffee works on the first minute the same way it works 90 minutes later. Cold showers are their own story. Online voices promise an explosion of energy and a cortisol surge. Experiments show something different. After cold immersion, cortisol does not rise. A few hours later, it actually drops below baseline. In people who practice cold exposure regularly, the cortisol response blunts after about 4 weeks. A cold shower can be a pleasant shock, but it is not the engine of your morning. If all 3 pillars, 5 a.m., delayed coffee, ice baths, turn out to be myths, then what does work? One process with no Instagram-friendly name, and it is the one almost everyone overlooks. It is called the cortisol awakening response. It is a sharp rise in cortisol that happens in every healthy human within the first 30 to 45 minutes after opening their eyes. The mechanics are simple. While you sleep, cortisol rises slowly toward morning. Waking itself triggers an additional, sharp burst. Cortisol jumps 50 to 70% above baseline and peaks roughly 30 minutes after your eyes open. Then it tapers off across the day. This burst is not a side effect of sleep. It is its own physiological signal and one of the most studied processes in endocrinology. A meta-analysis in the Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology pooled 709 findings from 212 studies. It confirmed that the cortisol awakening response is tied to how a person handles the demands of the day. What it does. A major paper in one of the leading scientific journals found that people with a robust awakening response have brains that work differently during the day. The prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, the 2 regions running focus and memory, coordinate better during demanding tasks. A strong response proactively tunes the brain for the day. Without it, coordination is worse, reactions are slower, switching between tasks gets harder. There is also the work versus rest data. A long-running cohort study of thousands of British civil servants showed something striking. The same individuals had a higher cortisol awakening response on workdays than on weekends. The body anticipates that the day will be demanding and prepares the resource in advance. This is not a stress reaction. It is a proactive mobilization. And the flip side, in people with chronic burnout and long-term exhaustion, the response gradually flattens. The signal disappears. This does not necessarily mean burnout flattens cortisol. It could be the other way around. But the link between a flat awakening response and the loss of working energy holds steadily across dozens of studies. The point. The cortisol awakening response is a 30-minute window during which the body itself launches focus, memory, and stress resilience for the entire day. And inside this window, 2 things matter. What amplifies the signal and what mutes it. First, what amplifies it. The single strongest factor is light, not phone light, real daylight. A study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism showed that the morning transition from dim to bright light raises cortisol by more than 50% within minutes. Switching on a lamp is not enough. The intensity needed is between 2.5 and 10,000 lux, and that level only happens in daylight. A typical room lamp gives you 100 to 300 lux. A window with direct sun gives you 10,000 or more. There are special cells in your retina that do not detect images. They detect total blue light in your field of view. They send a signal directly to a tiny region in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the size of a grain of rice, which acts as the central pacemaker of the entire body. Once it gets morning light, this nucleus tunes hormones, body temperature, attention, appetite, and sleep cycles for the next 24 hours. Without morning light, it operates on a rough estimate from yesterday, and the day comes out slightly out of sync. A systematic review showed that the window for the light effect is the first 2 to 3 hours after waking. If you got bright light in that window, the brain receives the signal, the day has started. If you did not, your internal clock drifts away from real time, and the cortisol response stays weaker. This explains something many people feel intuitively. A morning spent inside a dark apartment, under artificial light, with the curtains closed, feels heavy. 15 minutes outside, even on an overcast day, and your head clears. It is not the air. It is the body finally getting its signal. An overcast day still gives you 10,000 lux easily. Light in the first 30 minutes is the simplest and most powerful amplifier of the cortisol awakening response that exists. Now the other side. The biggest enemy of the response is the phone in the first minutes. When you have just opened your eyes, your brain is in a theta wave state. It is a transitional mode between sleep and full wakefulness, still close to relaxation. A different part of the network is active, and the move into full alertness is meant to happen smoothly, across those very 30 to 45 minutes. Watch what the phone does in that moment. Endless feed, notifications, other people's messages, news, short videos, a flood of incoming signals. The brain is forced to jump from the theta state straight into beta waves, the state of intense focus and stress. The jump happens in under a minute, with no proper transition. The cortisol response does not disappear, but it now follows a stress reaction script instead of a daytime preparation one. There is also a dopamine component. Each message delivers a small dopamine spike. From the very first minute of the day, the baseline dopamine level shifts upward, which means later in the day, ordinary things, a work task, a conversation, a walk, start feeling flat. The brain is waiting for the next quick hit. Concentrating on a single task gets harder because the dopamine background has already been raised. There is one more detail that works even without scrolling. A study published in the journal Scientific Reports found that the mere presence of a phone next to a person, even powered off, screen face down, reduces baseline attention. The brain spends some of its resource holding the information that the phone is nearby, and that information is a quiet background reminder of possible notifications. If the phone is on the nightstand right next to your bed, the morning window already runs under a small load, even when you do not touch it. This is not about the phone being bad in general. It is about that specific window. The same content 1 hour after waking does not break the cortisol response anymore. It has already played out. A curious detail, in part of the world, morning physical movement is built into culture at a national level. In Japan, there is a practice called radio taiso. It is a short exercise routine guided by music and an instructor's voice over the radio, and it has been broadcast every morning at 6:30 since 1928. According to a 2023 survey, more than 20 million Japanese people practice it at least once a week, in parks, at workplaces before the shift, in schools, at home. Japanese companies adopt radio taiso as part of the workday for morale, synchronization, and productivity. Biologically, this is a nearly perfect insertion into the cortisol awakening window. Light movement, daylight exposure, shared activity 10 to 15 minutes after waking. Exactly what amplifies the signal. And it was not designed by productivity coaches. It is a national habit with almost a century of history. When science and culture meet at the same point, that is usually a strong sign. Dig deeper, and the ritual nature of morning movement appears in nearly every long-lived culture. In monastic communities across different traditions, the morning starts the same way, rising before sunrise, stepping out into the light, a light physical action, a wash, then a required pause of silence. This is not spiritual fashion. It is an intuitive assembly of exactly the signals the body knows how to receive. Modern science is rediscovering what was built up over centuries. Why does this response exist at all? For millions of years, our ancestors woke at sunrise. eyes opened, the body was already on the ground, and within minutes movement began, gathering water, looking for food, climbing a slope, tracking animals. Those whose focus and stress resilience switched on quickly survived more often. Those whose brains booted up slowly walked into a predator, missed a threat, or lost the prey. The cortisol awakening response is the evolutionary mechanism for moving from a resting body to a working body. It was built for the savanna in the morning, sun on the horizon, motion, alertness. Not for a dark bedroom and a screen 10 centimeters from the face. When we block the curtains, stay in bed with the phone, and spend the first 30 minutes as a passive consumer, we are simply refusing to switch on a system the body spent millions of years building. There is one more detail that explains why this window connects to stress resilience for the whole day. Cortisol is not the stress hormone, as it is often called. It is the mobilization hormone. In small, anticipatory doses, it prepares the body for action. It raises available glucose, sharpens focus, heightens immune vigilance. If this resource is dispensed smoothly in the morning, by midday the body is already on a stable wave. If it is not, and stress arrives without preparation, the body responds with a sharper, more painful surge. The same stress comes at a higher cost. Now back to the popular routines, but seen through this lens. 5 a.m. wake-ups. By themselves they do nothing. If they line up with your chronotype and lead to a natural waking with light around, the cortisol response is normal. If they cost you an hour of sleep, the response weakens. The clock time does not matter. What matters is sleep quality and chronotype alignment. Coffee delayed by 90 minutes. No evidence that it changes the cortisol awakening response. Caffeine works from the first minute. If coffee helps you, drink it. The only real rule is not to drink it late in the evening, so it does not break your sleep. Cold showers. They do not produce an acute cortisol surge. Over a long horizon, they can train stress resilience. But as a morning trigger for focus, they are weaker than simply stepping into daylight. Gratitude journals and meditation. They do no harm, but they do not directly help the cortisol awakening response either. They are tools for regulating mood, not for launching the morning signal. What directly amplifies the response, with evidence behind it? Light in the first 30 minutes. Light movement, even 3 to 5 minutes of stretching. Hydration, a glass of water after the night. The absence of a phone in the first 30 minutes. There is no magic in 6 a.m., 5 a.m., or 4 a.m. The magic is in the window after waking. If you give your body light, movement, and water inside that window, instead of a phone in darkness, what your routine is called stops mattering. Specifically, for the next 2 weeks. First, light in the first 5 to 10 minutes. Not a bedroom lamp, an actual window with a direct view of the sky, or stepping outside. Open the curtains before picking anything up in your hands. If it is dark outside, switch on the brightest light you have. This is the strongest lever you have. Second, a glass of water immediately after waking. During the night, the body loses 300 to 500 milliliters of water through breath and skin. Even mild dehydration in the first hour reduces reaction time and concentration. This has been shown across several studies with deficits below 2% of body mass. A glass of water compensates for the night losses and clears that background fog in the head. Third, movement, 3 to 5 minutes. Not a workout, not a sport. Just walk around, roll your shoulders, stretch, step onto the balcony. An adolescent classroom experiment showed that light morning activity improves reaction time and working memory immediately afterward. The effect lasts for hours. Fourth, the phone stays down for the first 30 minutes. This is the hardest and the most useful rule. The phone alarm can stay, but email, messengers, the feed, they cannot. This is not about discipline. It is about preserving a window the body opens for you on its own. In total, 10 to 15 minutes for light, water, and movement. That is the entire required minimum. After that, the day runs on a normal cortisol awakening response, not on a stressed-out fragment of one. Optionally, if it fits your day, a light breakfast about 40 to 50 minutes after waking supports the glucose level the cortisol peak runs on. Coffee, whenever you want. There is no point in deliberately delaying it, but do not drink it within 6 to 7 hours of bedtime, or caffeine will eat into your deep sleep that night. And most importantly, a fixed bedtime. A consistent sleep schedule beats any morning ritual. The body learns to start preparing the cortisol response in advance because it knows when you will open your eyes. A morning routine that actually works does not look like Instagram covers. It is about a 30-minute window and 3 simple signals the body has been waiting for over millions of years. Light, water, movement, no screen. Everything else is decoration. This channel covers more breakdowns of how biology actually drives productivity, not at the level of feed-style advice. Subscribe if you want more methods backed by data. More breakdowns of what actually works are coming.